Let's look at average rate of change or slope. They're the same thing. So average rate of change just represents what slope is. That tells you how much the output changes or the y value changes on average for each 1 unit in x, the input change. So there's a formula for this. I'm going to put a star on this. This is a formula that you should know. For slope, it's going to be the difference in y's, so y2 minus y1 over the difference in x's, x2 minus x1. If the slope is positive, if we get out a positive number, that means that from left to right we're rising. Remember, we drew our positive slope. If we get a negative number out, that means we're falling left to right. As we plug in another x value, as the x value increases or the input increases, the y value decreases. And then if the slope is 0, it could be a constant part of the graph. So slope is normally m, so m would be 0 there. So looking at an example of this, we have in 2007, Adrian Peterson, a member of the Minnesota Vikings, rushed for 1,341 yards. So I'm going to stop after that first sentence. I'm given 2 numbers. So 2007, the year, and then how many yards that he rushed for. The next sentence says, in 2020, as a member of the Detroit Lions, he rushed for 604 yards. So 2020, we have 604. So if you tell me the year, I can tell you how many yards Adrian Peterson rushed for. And we're going to use that to find the average rate of change for his performance between 2007 and 2020. And we're going to round to 1 decimal place and state the units. So we're going to do the difference in y's over the difference in x's. So one thing we need to figure out is what are we plugging in and what are we getting out? So are we plugging in the year that he played and getting out how many yards he rushed? Or do we plug in how many yards he rushed and then try to figure out what year that was? Well, we're going to plug in the year. Tell me what year it was in his career. And we're going to get out the yards that he rushed for. And so slope is change in y over change in x. So it's always output divided by input. Let's write that slope formula just for practice. So m is the output over the input. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in this case, our slope is going to be our difference in y's. So 604 yards minus 1,341 yards. And order doesn't matter as long as you keep it consistent. So here I did the yards from 2020 first, and I subtracted the yards from 2007. So when I do the difference in x's, I want to remember that I did 2020 first, and then I subtracted the yards from 2007. So whatever order you use, you want to keep consistent. So I did 2020 first, and I subtracted 2007 in both the x's and the y's. I did the same order. So I'm just going to grab my calculator and do 604 minus 1341. And it looks like the number of yards he ran decreased. He went from 1341, he was like the superstar on the Vikings, my favorite NFC team, and then he switched to the Lions and he wasn't doing as well. So the number of yards was decreasing, so that negative answer makes sense. His performance went down. And then we're going to divide by doing 2020 minus 2007. That's a 13-year difference. So when we divide those, we're going to get the number of yards from the numerator per year in the denominator. So I am getting, and I'm going to round to 1 decimal place, I'm getting 56.692, it keeps going. And we want to round to 1 decimal place. So we want to round and figure out, should that 6 stay a 6 or should it round up to be a 7? So minus 56 point, and because there's a 9 after the 6, it's going to round up to be a 7. It's not going to say a 6. So negative 56.7, and we're going to use our appropriate units. So the numerator was measuring yards. It's always the output unit. Over the denominator, 2007 and 2020, those were years. So let's interpret this using a sentence. What does this mean? So we could say, on average, because that's what we found was the average rate of change. We could say Peterson's rushing yards. What did they do? Did they increase or decrease? Well, we got a negative answer. So the answer is negative. So we have that it's decreasing. So on average, Peterson's rushing yards decreased by 56.7 yards per year. And then we want to say the time frame that happened, because that wasn't always true. There was a point where his rushing yards were going up, up, up. He was doing amazing. So on average, these rushing yards that he had were decreasing by 56.7 yards, and that was just between 2007 and 2020. If we looked at other years, we would have had some positive values here. But on average, Peterson's rushing yards decreased by 56.7 yards per year between 2007 and 2020. So you want to state that this is an average rate of change, so you want to make sure you put average in there. You want to figure out, what does your answer mean? On average, was it increasing or decreasing? Since we had a negative answer, it was decreasing. Make sure you put your answer with the correct units, and then also say that the time that this is true for, since it's not always true. So I'd underline those 4 things when you're doing an interpretation of slope. You want to make sure you say it's average, is it increasing or decreasing, by how much with units, and then also the appropriate time frame.